let's get started with our topic, yeah, which is the art of detachment today in the fire service in particular. You might think like, why do we even got to talk about this? Why do we got to talk about detachment? Do firefighters have issues being like apathetic or detached sometimes? Like, you probably have a degree of that, but there is a difference between apathy and detachment, right? To develop apathy is a non-understanding or refusing to feel something versus detachment, which has more to do with the expectation and the outcome, right? So I want to highlight first there is a difference between being apathetic to something, whether it's somebody's problems, whether it's a call that you're on, and being detached from it. Detachment doesn't mean apathy, and it's a very thin line that we often get blurred inside of the fire service. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. How do you care deeply without holding on too tight, right? And I want you to think about something. I want you to think about what's one thing in your life that maybe you're gripping too tightly. And I'm going to be pulling from this talk, from some of the teachings, some of the talks of, if anybody's familiar with Alan Watts, right? Alan Watts is he's long since dead. Uh, Very famous Western speaker, philosopher. And it ties in with some other talks like Eastern philosophy. Something called Wu Wei in Korean, which is the art of striving without striving. Right? It's a hey, how do I strive, enjoy the process, and try and believe and attempt without caring so much about the outcome that is what gets in the way of me actually achieving it. Can I grip something too tightly? Can I want something so badly that desire gets in the way of me actually being able to do it? And so here we talk about detachment, right? Now, think about some things in your life that this might apply to, right? What's one thing in your life you might be gripping too tightly, right? It could be your career, could be your reputation, maybe your fitness level, a relationship you're in. You ever gripped too hard onto a relationship with anyone? A mistake, a goal, someone else's opinion? And then we have to ask ourselves, is holding on to it tighter actually making life better? See, today what we're going to talk about is one of the most misunderstood ideas, which is detachment doesn't mean caring less. It means suffering less. And there's a difference. It means suffering less. Okay, so what does detachment really mean then? And when a lot of us hear this word and hear this expression, many hear the word detachment and imagine someone who's detached, someone who doesn't care, right? Someone who doesn't have any emotional investment in something, right? Emotionless, you might say, passive, disconnected. But if we're going to go back to this person who I was highlighting, Alan Watts, after this call, I would encourage you, challenge you to go look up some of the toxins. It's all over the place. It's been well recorded throughout history. Alan Watts, he said like detachment means participating fully in life without trying to possess it. What does that mean? Participating fully in life without trying to possess it. How can I be an active participant in what I do, be fully invested, fully present, fully aware, fully engaged in the process, but detached from the outcome? Detachment means participating fully in life without trying to possess it. So imagine holding a butterfly. If you leave your hand open, it might stay. But I can guarantee what will happen is I love this. I love seeing this here. I love seeing this thing, this beautiful. You might not like butterflies. I'm just using this as an analogy, right? You might be like, oh, if I had a butterfly, I'd just be like, no. But all right, listen, let's just imagine that you do like butterflies. All right. Say, hey, this is really nice. You're holding it in your hand loosely, appreciating it while it's there. But then a thought comes like, I don't want this thing to leave. So you close your hand. So I don't want it to leave. I want to keep this thing. I want to keep it here. I don't want anything to happen to it. And I grip it so tight. And then what happens 10 out of 10 times to that butterfly? You're going to crush it. You're going to crush it. It's going to die. This beautiful thing. And I destroyed it by holding on so tight, being fearful that it might leave. And that fear actually keeps me in a moment that's in the future that doesn't exist. So if you leave your hand open, it might stay, but I guarantee if you squeeze it, it will die. And then I guess the question is, how does life work the same way? The harder we try to control everything, the more suffering we create for ourselves. We talk about controlling the controllables and being at peace with what you actually cannot control. And in what ratio do those things exist? The harder we try to control everything, the more suffering we create. Where does this need? I'm going to screw the quote. I can't remember who said it, but one of the fundamental sources of all human suffering is the desire for permanence. And what in this life is truly permanent? It's our expectation, our desire for that which doesn't change in a lifestyle, especially in the fire service, where everything can change just like that. And yet we desire stability, we desire permanence. So, where in life are we trying to force an outcome? And how are we taught in the fire service to go about problems? Because 9 times out of 10, I don't know about the firefighters you worked with, option A doesn't work. We go into, hey, we should go into option B, right? No, I need to try option A. Harder, more force, more pressure, more. No, you can't force that door. You're just not doing it hard enough. All right. We kind of are taught that. We're kind of surrounded in a culture where that's the approach, right? Hey, I'm going to do it. And if I can't do it, I'm just going to. And listen, sometimes more pressure is the answer. But how often is it not? How often is it not? Alan Watts, he likes to talk about another person. I'm going to butcher the name. I think it's Cheng Zhu. Don't call me on it if I'm wrong. I don't want to know. He said this. He said, the wise mind is like a mirror. What does a mirror do? What does a mirror do? It's not rhetorical. And it's not a trick question either. What does a mirror do?
Reflect.
It reflects. Reflects everything, right? It doesn't discriminate. It reflects. But it also keeps nothing. When it's out of its range, it doesn't chase, it doesn't resist. It simply responds to an environment, right? It doesn't have a will like that. Now, you might be thinking, what the hell are you getting at here? I'll tell you. I want you to compare it to how you live your life. Let's say you're doing a training at the station. Maybe you're running the training. And somebody, a firefighter, criticizes it, criticizes the training, criticizes your performance, criticizes how you lead it. Has anybody ever experienced that? Maybe not even to your face. Maybe it comes back to you later through the grapevine, and you hear so and so said this. They didn't want to say it to your face, but they wanted to talk all the smack. Happens. Someone criticizes us, and then we replay it for 3 weeks. Or maybe it's a bad decision on a shift. Maybe we screwed something up on a call. We carry it home. Relive a mistake, sometimes for years. So in that case, is my mind a mirror or is it a filing cabinet? And is the goal to store everything? Or is the goal to embrace forgiveness, to live in the moment, and to move on? Do I want to be a filing cabinet? Or do I want to learn? Why do we talk? I say, hey, one of the things that people are really skeptical about when they first start this program, we talk about the 10 laws of reclaim. One of the biggest ones is embrace forgiveness. And who is that for? It's for you. It's for no one else but you. The only person that carries that around is you, fighting the battles that nobody else will ever see. So who's it for? It could be another person that wronged you, but you are the one carrying the weight. And back on that note, one of the hardest things that I've ever had to personally forgive myself for or work on, it's like a work in progress. It's not like this, like, hey, I've done it, hey, still to this day, even being out, still thinking back to decisions that I made on a call that I wish went differently. That's the hardest thing I've had. I don't know about you guys, forgiving myself for a bad decision on a call. You think about that. I guess the realization is that the goal wasn't to pretend it didn't happen. The goal was to experience it, learn from it, honor it. Can you think of it in a way that it's like, man, thank you for that experience? Because it's going to help me in how I approach situations, how I respond in the future. I wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't experienced that hardship. Experience it, learn it, honor it, and then allow yourself to move forward. This is the art of detachment. But if you carry every call forever, well, eventually that weight stacks up, doesn't it? We know that things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and suicide are more prevalent in the fire service than they are in other populations. This is not an opinion piece. This is something that we can see. And it's not to attribute value to it. It's to say that every one of those conversations that I had, I was on the peer support team, and everyone that I've met across the country who was likewise on those teams and helped mitigate some of these situations, the most recurring theme was that it always felt like it was just the one call that broke everything in these situations. But when you dive into them, it wasn't usually the one call. That it was the one call that finally broke the expression, right? The straw that broke the camel's back. But it was the final piece, not the only piece. There were usually microcosms of stress and situations and unresolved problematic narratives and experiences that were piling on for a long time before that final snap. How much do we carry with us? What is the current load? It's usually not just one call that does the whole thing. I'm not painting with a broad paintbrush. There is nuance here. There is many degrees of different kinds of situations. However, most of the time, it's an accumulation of stress. Sometimes that we can't even realize we're taking on. Sometimes we don't realize until the detriments are too great. If we go back to Alan Watts specifically, he believed that most suffering comes from time travel. Time travel. I'm not talking hot tub time machine. I'm talking time travel of the mind. Right? Although it's a great movie. It was time travel of the mind. Well, yesterday, tomorrow, usually not today, usually not in the exact moment that we're in right now. So think about your mind. How much time do you spend replaying conversations? And in while you're doing that, what's happening in front of you that you're missing? Is there something going on right now that needs my attention? The moment that I'm in, the moment that's alive? Or am I spending it running through, missing out on life, observing the one that I remember? Made a post recently on my social media and I said one of the mistakes and one of the things that I've struggled with recently was making all of these sacrifices to build a life at the sacrifice of living one. Someday I will live a life. Someday I will participate. Someday I will enjoy what's in front of me, but I have to earn it first. I have to go out and do it. And listen, is there something to be said about putting in your time, planning for the future? Absolutely. But how long can you chase that carrot down the road and justify sacrificing your life to fortify yourself for a tomorrow that might not be guaranteed. And if it were all to end tomorrow, what would you look back on and be like, God, I didn't get to that. I always wanted to. Why didn't I do that? How much time do you spend replaying those moments and thinking about mistakes and imagining worst case scenarios? You ever had to have a tough conversation with somebody? Maybe this is just the way my mind works, and you're just sitting there thinking about, okay, I'm gonna say this, and then they might reply like that, and blah 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 blah, and go through this whole net, and all of a sudden you're imagining a whole conversation, imagining how they're gonna respond, and then all of a sudden getting angry at the imagined circumstance that you are thinking about, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't even real. You sit there, your heart rate's picking up, and you're like, I'm angry at an imagination. Meanwhile, life is just happening in front of me and I'm not living it. Sitting there entrapped by my own mind, thinking about something that, you know what, 9 times out of 10, go and imagine that circumstance and then go have that conversation and it goes nothing like what I imagined. Completely different. Mind trying to protect me from the worst case scenario. Thank you, mind. Thank you, body. Meanwhile, life is happening. So ask yourself, like, where are you now? Literally, you're here with me on this call. And where is your mind? And if those things are different, then you've left the present. You say, hey, God, I thought I was doing a firefighter program. Why are we talking about being present, being in the moment, meditation? Say, you guys know if you've gotten to this point in your curriculum where you've started the habit of meditation, and if you haven't yet, just know it's coming. You'd be like, hey, well, I don't know about that stuff. What would be more beneficial to a career, a lifestyle, than to learn how to downregulate your nervous system and how to bring you into the present moment? See, meditation is the art of concentration. What? The thoughts wander, the mind wanders, and you gently bring it back to the present. Keyword gently. I don't know about you, but when I first started meditating, I catch myself getting distracted. I'd be like, no, you stupid piece of shit. Get back into, no, this is not. Okay, but then even becoming aware of the fact that that's the narrative running in my head. Okay. God, man, I really do not talk to myself well. My first screw up, and I'm sitting there just berating myself. All right. Well, now I know. Now I can be more aware of it. It's like, oh, you stupid. Okay, you know what? It's fine. Let me bring it back. Here, I'm right here. I'm here now. To still thus control the mind is of the utmost importance. Career like firefighting, lifestyle like firefighting. Because here's the thing. Here's the firefighter trap, right? This profession, this lifestyle, it teaches preparation. How often have you heard the expression, you do not rise to the occasion, you fall back to the degree of your training? We do. And there is a degree of that is like your body needs the muscle memory. It needs to know what it's doing without thinking about it. Sometimes that ability, not sometimes, often that ability to be able to follow through, to trust your body to do what it needs to do, to have the skills there, to be prepared, is the difference between life and death, between efficiency and the whole operation falling apart. Nobody would disagree with that. That's a strength. But what about when that preparation leaves your body and it turns to the mind? How does that become the anxiety that we were seeking to eliminate with action? We begin trying to control things that were never ours to control. Maybe it's your administration. I see some people rolling their eyes, looking away. maybe maybe it's the promotion that you didn't get or that you did. Department politics. Maybe it's more personal. Maybe it's decisions that your kids are making about their future. Say, hey, this isn't what I wanted for them. I can use that example because I did the opposite of every single thing my parents ever wanted me to do. I was supposed to go to law school, you guys. You know, when it came down to it and I graduated and I didn't go to law school and I went and worked for a nonprofit, you think that went down smoothly? You think my parents had a little bit of no, probably not so smooth. It didn't. Okay. Maybe it's the emotions of your significant other, your spouse, the economy, other people's opinions. Are those yours? Are those yours to own? So you have a couple different examples over the last few weeks. You know, if you didn't know, like I, as a pre-law student, I studied philosophy, and the Stoics would call this misplaced control, and Alan Watts would call this resistance to reality. What is my expectation and my belief of what should be versus what actually is? And that dissonance, that space in between, is where suffering lies. I need it to be like this. It is supposed to be. I deserve. This is what I want versus the circumstances in front of me. That dissonance is what creates our suffering. When we talk detachment, it's not non caring, it is detachment from outcome, detachment from expectation, acceptance, radical acceptance of what is actually happening rather than a resistance to reality by virtue of what I thought it would be. What are you trying to control that does not actually belong to you? And again, here is where people misunderstand detachment because it doesn't mean caring less. It means loving, participating fully without possession, serving. You're a firefighter. We're in the fire service, serving without needing recognition. Am I doing this because I need to be recognized or because I believe in the value of being a person of service to my community, to my family, to my friends, to the people I care about? And if that's based in, I need to get something back from it, is that service? I remember a very, very prominent moment when I was a few years on where we were just getting. You ever have one of those days where it's just like, God, I swear the regulars, they have cameras set up inside the station. They know when I'm gonna eat. They know when I'm trying to get something done. They know when I'm trying to take a shit. They know when I'm trying to take a shower. And they're calling, they're waiting and they're watching and they call specifically when I'm trying to do something. Well, we had this situation and the crew, myself included, we were just angry. It was just like every single important thing we had set out to do that day, we were just, God. And my lieutenant took us all to the side, or the lieutenant at the time, and he said, "Listen, do you understand that when you're here, you're being paid to be inconvenienced for 24 hours at a time? This is why you're here. You're here to be of service. And that means that it's not always going to be convenient to you, but that was never the point. It wasn't supposed to be convenient for you. You shouldn't be here, and service isn't designed to be convenient. In fact, often service means I'm inconveniencing myself for the sake of someone else. Not always, but often. And I do so willingly. I give of myself fully. Maybe it's training without tying your whole identity to the performance you have in that moment. Your whole value coming down to how good you're able to do vertical ventilation. How fast can I throw a ladder? I'm the best at fill in the blank. Maybe it's about being a leader and realizing that sometimes leadership, real leadership, doesn't always mean that everybody's going to agree with you and being okay with that. Is being a good leader the same as making sure that everyone likes you? Or is it about knowing where you stand, where your line is in the sand, having the values and leading by example? I guess here's the point, right? You can care deeply without being consumed by that. And like we see it all the time, right? It's easier with strangers. I think oftentimes the personal relationships of the fire service are even harder to navigate than hard situations in a medical because it feels more personal and you spend all the time that we do with each other, sometimes decades with the same people. Man, those relationships can get personal, huh? Okay. But imagine treating a patient, whether you transport, whether you don't. Everybody's treated patients. If you're doing the job right, you're doing everything you can for that patient, giving everything you got, all the training, your attention, compassion, and yet, despite doing everything right, you can follow perfectly, you can follow your protocol from A to Z perfectly, and they still die. You do everything right, and they still go. Ask yourself, if my identity depended on saving absolutely everyone, what would happen if I tried my value? Could do everything right. And this is the true on the fire ground too. Remember coming up, well, that was one of the lessons from my first captains. Like this is one of the careers where you can do absolutely everything right and someone still dies. On the fire ground. Things you could never see coming. Did everything could with the information that we had and somebody still dies. Now here's the thing. What if we just change the equation? Instead of having this attachment to the outcome, we say our purpose is simply to just do absolutely everything we can with what we have. What if it was just like I'm doing my best. I did everything I could because when those situations happen, I don't know about you, but in those situations where we did have somebody circle the drain and go quick or we had something go wrong on the fire ground, I guarantee and I bet every single person in here in one way, shape, or form can resonate with this. If you have to look back on that situation later, it's a lot easier to digest and move past if I can look back and think, yeah, I did everything I could. I did. I did. I gave it my best shot. I did in that moment. I did. Versus like, oh man, like I cut a corner. I know I cut a corner and that led to a worse outcome. Man, that's a lot. That's a whole different story, isn't it? One is personal responsibility. If your purpose is to give your best, you can continue serving. You can detach from the outcome, but don't detach from the effort. You see the difference here when we talk caring and detachment and apathy. Am I detached from the outcome or am I detached from the effort? When we talk about this, we talk about how I do not become attached to the outcome of my efforts. If I can focus solely on the effort, solely on the service, what would change in my life? What do I have control over? You think about this inside the program that you're learning. This is what we teach. There are things that you can control and there are things that you can't. What can you control? I can control a lot of my habits. Can't control the calls I get and when they drop. Can't control how I'm going to feel the next day. Can't control always feeling motivated. I can control my choices today. I can commit to the actions and detach from the outcomes. And here's the interesting thing when I detach from the outcome, I focus more on the actions and showing up every way I need to in every room that I'm in. The outcome that you were originally desiring becomes much more reachable and much more successful. It's okay to want things for yourself and to set goals. But if you assign yourself value and evaluation on how it's going in correlation with those, and if it doesn't always meet your expectations, because you know what is here, let's take weight loss as an example. A lot of people here want to lose some weight. Okay. We've gotten on here with somebody, it's like in the first month, they're like, well, I only lost 4 pounds, 5 pounds. I thought it would go faster. And then we fast forward another 4 or 5 months and they're like, okay, I'm down 40 pounds. Like, what happens? You trust the process. Can you keep following through? Can you stay consistent? Can you focus on that every day instead of the specific outcome and your attachment to it? Because if we keep refining that process, the only thing that can happen as you improve, as you learn, as you make mistakes, as you get back on your feet, is that you will master this process. Unless you get lost in wanting outcomes too quickly or in reality not matching your expectations. Alan Watts told a specific story. It was kind of similar to the butterfly, but he said there was a little girl who was gifted a rabbit. And she loved this rabbit so much that she crushed it to death with love on the way home. And here's the interesting thing about that analogy, because you can go wrong on both ways, right? Imagine holding that rabbit. You hold it too loosely and it runs away. You hold it too tightly, and like this story, you suffocate it. What else in life works that way? I think relationships work that way. They can work that way. Can you be not nurturing enough in a relationship? Can you be overbearing in a relationship? What about leadership? Can you be too loose? Let people run amok? Can you be too harsh? Can you be too controlling? Can you be a micromanager? Think it works this way in parenting? I can't know. I'm gonna walk a very tight line here. I realize I'm not a parent, but I can sympathize as somebody who's been the recipient of a parent. Can you parent too loosely? Can you be too protective? And can my goals work the same way? If I can apply it to all of these situations, the goals that I have, can I be too loose with my goals? Can I be too harsh with my goals? So I've used this analogy before. It's an observation that I've made after coaching people for a long time. Uh, in my experience, this is like very basic breakdown, but and when I started primarily working with firefighters, so we got type A people and type B people. Since working in the fire service, seems to be mostly just type A. But here's the thing. It's true across the board. Type A, type B. Type B being like relaxed, everything go with the flow, the surfer on the beach, everything's good. Type A, I'm organized. I got my plan, I have my thing, I do my dot, I'm on time, I whatever, fill in the blank, the type A people. And here's the thing. There are qualities and benefits to both. And each group is terrified of becoming the other person. They are terrified of becoming the other person. So I never want to be like that. But really, what each of them need to do is they don't have to go across the fence. They just have to move closer to it. Because there are things from that other way of life, that other perspective that would be beneficial to that person. The type A person that needs to control everything, is super organized and punctual and yada yada, fill in the blank. They could probably use a little bit of pump the brakes, relax, enjoy. And the type B person could probably use a little bit more structure, a little more direction, a little bit more fire under their ass. How do your goals work that way? And here's the thing. When we hold on to it so tight, sometimes our desperation ruins the very thing we're trying to protect. So where are we squeezing too hard? And think about what we become attached to in the fire service, right? What is this identity piece? What is the story I tell myself about being a We got some people recently promoted in here, new officers, lieutenants, senior pipemen, some people in administrative roles. We have battalion chiefs, we have assistant chiefs, we have people who've been on 20 plus years, might not have the rank and profile, but certainly considered a leader at their department. We've talked a lot about leadership. Is it being in charge or is it taking care of those in your charge? Oftentimes, the senior firefighters are more of a cultural influence than even some of the officers, or just as important of a piece. Just as important. What do we become attached to? Oh, I'm the strongest one on my unit. I'm the best at medical calls. I'm this type of officer. I am respected. I am needed. And then one day, retirement comes or injury happens. People leave. And if your identity depends on something that is temporary, then your peace disappears when it does. I guess the point could be summarized in one sentence, which is detachment allows you to appreciate what you have without believing that you own it forever. This idea of permanence, is it even real? Or do we just get comfortable believing that some things will never change? Is that a belief that matches with reality? If you believe there's anything in your life that might not change, then what is going to happen if it does? I think we often believe that happiness lives on the other side of an event that's going to happen, right? The next promotion cycle, the next vacation I got to get to, the next 20 pounds I got to lose, the next paycheck, the next milestone. And yet the irony is that life isn't happening there, it's happening right here. I'll steal from Alan Watts again. He said that the point of music isn't the last note, it's the experience of listening. It's the experience of being. It's going out into the street and into life without thinking or attributing value or judgment to the things that you're experiencing. It's just experiencing them. If you go out, walk out into the street at 6 in the morning during a sunrise and think, oh, that's a shadow. This is the sun. This is a hill. Oh, I have this laundry list of things to do. Oh, okay, now my mind's spinning. I got my to-do list. I got all this other stuff walking down the street. You just stop. Take a moment, take a breath, and be like, man, what is this right here? I had one of these moments this morning. Stop running through all the laundry list. Okay, I got my call today at 1 o'clock, and I got a thing. I got to make some content. Got to do this thing. Meanwhile, I'm missing the trees swaying in the wind, the birds, the sun rising, the glow, the twilight. Just stop myself and be like, why would I miss this moment for the sake of prepping the rest of my day? I'm not saying don't prepare. One of the things we talk about is plan ahead. I'm talking about look at those moments when they're happening and make sure you enjoy those too. Make sure you enjoy the moments that you planned for originally. Life isn't a problem to solve, it's something to participate in. What part of your life are you rushing through instead of experiencing it? And this may be the hardest truth. You've never experienced yesterday. You experienced it when it was today. Again. You'll never experience tomorrow when tomorrow arrives. Will also be today. Because life only exists in one place, which is right here. Everything else exists in your thoughts. And the more we fight this, the more disconnected we become. So realize this, if you remember anything. Detachment isn't about becoming cold and it's not about becoming apathetic, it's about becoming free. Free from needing, keyword, needing life to unfold exactly as you planned it to be. Free from carrying yesterday into today. Free from sacrificing today because you're obsessed with tomorrow. And the firefighter who practices detachment doesn't care less. They simply suffer less because they stopped trying to control what was never theirs in the first place. So leave with this. What are you gripping too tightly? What would happen if you loosened that grip? Where is your mind spending most of its time? And if today was enough, how would you live life differently? Everything we talked about today, specific laws and reclaim, play into this topic. Flexible consistency, embrace forgiveness. Even measure everything. You're like, how do that? Measure to learn, not to define your worth. Right? Flexible consistency. Stop obsessing over perfection and focus on today's actions. Embrace forgiveness. Let go of what happened in the past instead of carrying it indefinitely. Prioritize yourself. Be present with your own life instead of constantly chasing the next milestone. And constantly evolve. Flow with change instead of resisting it. And for firefighters, at least when I think about this topic, this isn't about becoming detached from the job. It's about becoming detached from the illusion that you control every outcome. And ironically, that is what going to make you calmer, more resilient, and a better firefighter overall. In the dojo, which got some new people, I know I'm a broken record. I grew up in a martial arts school. There's a painting on the wall. It says simply, immerse yourself in practice until you find stillness within the waves of illusion. Immerse yourself in practice until you find stillness within the waves of illusion. So what illusions are we carrying? Probably one in which we think we control a lot more than we do. Great. All right, that's what I have for you guys today.